Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show, everyone. Justin Trudeau has truly made absolutely everything worse in Canada during his tenure as Prime Minister. There is literally not a single metric that has improved under Justin Trudeau's tenure, and I just want to take you through a few of the major indicators of quality of life in Canada. Let's just start off with just government debt. Government debt has absolutely exploded with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau with the purse strings of the country. This is a chart over the last 10 years showing that our overall debt has gone from less than 600, 500 billion dollars up to 1.12 billion, which is 1 trillion 100 billion dollar debt. That is absolutely insane. And you could say, well, it was COVID era spending, but the debt didn't exactly explode in 2020. You could say it was a trailing debt that mostly showed up in the next year. But why does it keep rapidly going up after 2021, 2022, and 2023 faster than it was in the previous years? These guys cannot hold themselves back from spending. And every dollar they're spending is not because they truly think it's going to make the lives of Canadians better. It's because they think it's going to buy some votes. They think that more programs means that Canadians are going to see that they're doing more good. But that's never how it's worked at all. The GDP of the Soviet Union was almost entirely controlled through government spending. The government spent basically everything in the Soviet Union. Didn't mean that people's lives were better than in countries where the government spends less. It's always the quality of the spending that matters, not the quantity or the ratio of overall GDP. Anyways, well, how about we look at crime? I've heard that crime's down in recent years. Well, one thing, we've actually decriminalized a lot of stuff, and the police do not actually really enforce the law like they used to because police officers who are doing a good job themselves know that they cannot hold criminals anymore, that it's catch and release these days, which has severely undermined our ability to enforce the law at all. But let's talk about violent crime because violent crime is almost always followed up on by the police. Police don't just say, "Oh, you got shot, you got hit by somebody in public. We're not going to look into it." It's mostly the retail theft that reporting has gone down on because they know nobody's going to do anything. Violent crime is in fact worse per capita now than it was in the late 90s when we had comprehensive Stats Canada statistics on it. Our rate of violent crime in 1998, when violent crime and just crime overall was extremely bad, was 1,344 in 100,000. And that's not homicide, obviously, that would be insane. This is just all violent crime: assault, battery, homicide, other sorts of physically violent crimes. So it goes from 1,300, ticks up into the early 2000s, and then it starts to really go down as our tough on crime laws back in those days come into effect. And it gets all the way down to 1,044 violent crimes in 100,000. It was 1,344 and 1,494 in 2000, 1998 to 2000. That was really bad. And by 2014, things are actually starting to look pretty good. Just 1,044 violent crimes per 100,000. Then Justin Trudeau gets into office and it starts moving up a little bit, not just completely negligible at this point. And then in these years, after 2017, when more of the Liberals' soft on crime laws start to hit the books, we see violent crime start exploding, especially after 2019. And now, in the year 2023, obviously we don't have statistics for 2024 yet since the year's not over, we now have higher violent crime, a higher per capita rate of violent crime compared to the high crime area of the late 90s. It was worse in the early 90s, just like it was in the US, but I'm talking in terms of our actual stats that were being collected, and this is the most comprehensive stats we have that started being collected in 98. We have higher crime than in 2000 and 2002 when crime was very high, but it's higher now. That is absolutely insane. And this isn't like, well, things aren't so good out there, so that's why people are committing crimes. Violent crimes, that's always the thing. I actually have a master's degree in public policy, and my research paper was on studying crime. And my point that I proved was that poverty actually has very little to do with crime, because people argue that, well, people only steal, people only commit crimes because they're materially deprived. It's a very socialist argument. I have studied different neighborhoods in Toronto. Areas with lower median incomes oftentimes will have lower crime rates than neighboring neighborhoods, just because they actually have strong family structures and they have a value on education. Material wealth doesn't really have that much to do with it. But that's just an aside to say that they'll try and justify like theft and those kind of crimes, selling drugs, whatnot, because of the bad economy. But how do you justify violent crime? Is it violent crime because people, are poor? That you don't beat someone up, you don't commit an assault of any variety because you don't have money. That's ridiculous. So there we have it. We have debt that's going really bad. We have our crime rates that are exploding. Let's check something else out. Maybe Justin Trudeau's doing something right and I'm just not noticing it yet. Oh wait, here let's look at Canadians' wealth over time. So Canada's GDP per capita has fallen for the sixth quarter in a row. That is absolutely insane. And this doesn't mean that before then we were just rising towards the sky and Canadians were getting wealthier every single quarter. No, that just means it was maybe more mixed before. But now, in the third quarter of 2024, that marks our sixth quarter in a row of us becoming poorer over time, per capita poorer. I hate the stupid talking point from the Liberals that, well, you know that Canada's the fastest growing economy in the G7. That is utter nonsense. What we are is the fastest growing country in terms of population, which you'd have to work really hard to raise our population as fast as we have without boosting the overall GDP. Even if every single immigrant that comes to the country only has $5 to their name, technically we added $5 to the economy and our GDP went up. That's all the Liberals are doing. It's a stupid parlor trick. I just want to show you this stat right here. It's not like it's been going down only like a percent. Our GDP per capita has only been going down a percent over the last 6 quarters. In this last third quarter of 2024 alone that we just got through, the per capita GDP fell by 0.4%. So people's overall per capita wealth in this country, the per capita wealth has fallen by 0.4. That's insane. That is a single quarter and almost a 0.5%. Each person is 0.5% less well off than in the previous quarter, than compared to the previous year's quarter. That's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. And now this is why the Liberals are trying to reverse course on immigration, because so many of these problems are the fault of the Liberals' immigration policy. I don't need to pull up charts on it, but mainly the housing crisis is the fault of just having too many warm bodies in the country. Everyone needs a shelter, absolutely. You can't then bring in 1.3 million people in a year, even if some are temporary, and think that we're going to find an apartment for everybody, which has resulted in either people not having homes, people's mortgage payments or rents being like a massive chunk of their monthly incomes, eating up a massive chunk of their monthly incomes, or like many new immigrants, they're almost enslaved working bad jobs and then having to be jammed into half a basement suite with like 6 or 7 other people. It's a horrible position that we're currently in. And now the Liberals don't even know how they're actually going to get people out of the country who have visas that are expiring in the next year or two. I just want to cut now to this clip with immigration with Tom Kimmich, the Conservative MP for Calgary Shepherd, questioning Canada's immigration minister, Mark Miller, on how he can even keep track of those who need to be leaving the country soon.
How will you ensure that a person whose visa has expired will leave? We know that just on study permits, there are 766,000 expiring by the end of December 2025. How will your department ensure that at the end of those study permit periods, those persons will leave?
Again, he's actually stuck on the most basic questions. You bring people into the country, how do they then leave if they have to leave? You would think that is one of like the top 10 things that you need to know as the immigration minister.
There are many ways that people leave the country, Tom. The vast majority leave voluntarily, and that's what's expected.
So explain those ways. How will you ensure it?
We work with our partners, including CBSA, to investigate, obviously, and prosecute those who violate immigration law. If someone refuses to leave, they're in violation of the law. And CBSA, after due process, has the legal obligation to remove people.
But the whole point is you need to actually be able to find those people so that you can remove them, and so a CBSA agent can do something. This is so bureaucratic and policy-esque of him. Like, the thing is, my master's degree, again, I don't really bring up my education much because, to a certain extent, who cares? I only bring it up because I find policy people drive me up the wall. That's the vast majority of times I bring up the fact I have a master's in public policy. I hate policy people so much. Not like hate in like a real emotional way, but policy people get on my nerves. They think, well, the law says they have to leave, and the law says a CBSA agent will enforce it. Okay, well, how are we actually practically going to do it? Well, the law says. It's like, no, you actually need to be able to find these people to remove them if you are to remove them. The start of his question, or start of his answer, was the real answer. Usually the first thing you say is probably the real thing that you like, your real position. Mark Miller just thinks that people leave voluntarily, and if they don't, I guess technically a CBSA officer might go and pick them up. It's ridiculous.
Again, this isn't something that is taken lightly, but in the vast majority of cases, those people that have come here temporarily and do not have the right to stay, in fact, leave.
So then my next question will be, your plan calls for a cap on international students, 485,000 2024, 437,200 to 2025. There's been adjustments to those. So obviously there's a discrepancy between the two. So how many do you project will leave the country then at the end of December 2025? All 766,000? What's the proportion? What are the forecasts the department has?
You'll have to be clear on that. A discrepancy between what and what?
Between the number of people who will be allowed into the country and then the number of people who will be on a study permit that's expiring. So those who are expiring the end of December 2025, how many of them will actually leave? Are you saying 100% will be expected to leave, or are you going to send CBSA to chase all 766,000?
You know that is not what happens. There are a number of things that occur. Some people actually get renewals. Some people get postgraduate work permits and stay a longer period. And we do work with CBSA to monitor these things. And when
Mark, we don't care about the people who are going to be getting extensions because they're taking another degree. That's obvious that we are not going to have to remove them. Tom is asking, so how are you going to make up the difference between people who within that 700,000 whose visas expire because their degrees are over or because they never reapplied, and making sure that the number of visas that expire and do not get extended, how are you going to make up for the amount of people who don't end up leaving?
Statistics Canada reports on these, they take into account a whole variety of factors in estimating how many people are here and how many people have left.
So at the end of this year, 2024, how many international students do you expect to leave, and how many have left so far when their study permits expired?
How many have left as
so far?
November today? We don't
or
have
October
that number.
1st. Can you provide those to the committee?
I don't know. We could look into it.
Minister, how can you not know? It's in the immigration levels plan. There's a bunch of charts on page 22 starting about temporary resident immigration to Canada, persons who are in the country. It's in the immigration levels plan. It's in there. So how can you not know what that number would be? There's an order paper question, these government documents that were signed by your parliamentary secretary that were tabled with Parliament that has the numbers. So there's supposed to be expiring study permits in December, 84,642. And then in November, 36,130. In October, 10,182. In the month before, 127,348. So how many of those people are still in the country? How many have received the renewal? And how many of them have CBSA now looking at them?
What I can provide to you as a number is the expected decrease over that period of
Okay, this is painful to watch. We don't have to watch anymore. He knows he's lying. Tom knows he's lying, and he knows that we know that Tom knows that he's lying. Obviously, like, there's no way of knowing, and this is the problem. Who could guess why the U.S. is very nervous about the border with Canada when we have a crazy amount of people who have entered the country in the last 2 years? Obviously, the vast majority with visas and work permits and are either permanent residencies. And how are they like confident that when all these things expire, that we're not just going to let these people walk over the US's northern border? I know it's not going to happen like predominantly with these people, but obviously it's a big problem because the Liberal government is absolutely incompetent. And so let's move on to another thing that the Liberals have messed up because they cannot project strength on a global level. It is the kind of opening trade negotiations with the US. Yes, it was about the border and it was about potential tariffs, but it's really the opening act to the upcoming trade negotiations. So Justin Trudeau just posted this an hour ago saying, "Today, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Safety and I briefed opposition leaders on my meeting with President Trump and the Canada-US partnership. It's in the interest of every Canadian worker and business that we take a Team Canada approach on this. Can we stop talking? I hate the rhetoric of Team Canada. Let's just get the border secure and done correctly." Trudeau acknowledged that that was what Donald Trump was asking for, but he's too weak to pursue it without this mealy-mouthed language about, oh, we need a Team Canada approach and we're trying to protect workers. Just secure the border, dude. Just get something done correctly. This is why Donald Trump and even the U.S. under Joe Biden doesn't take Justin Trudeau seriously. There was that kind of joke, and it really is a joke. It's just a meme that President Donald Trump says, "Oh, Canada should just become the 51st state of the U.S. if you guys can't keep ripping us off for like $100 billion every year to keep your economy afloat." In response to Trudeau at dinner saying, a 25% tariff would ruin the Canadian economy. Again, I think this is all just kind of silly table talk. Justin Trudeau saying, a 25% tariff would destroy us, knowing that it's probably not going to happen anyways, and Trump's jabbing him back. And in fact, in that story that was reported on Fox News, it's not even correct that Canada's ripping off the U.S., just as the U.S. isn't ripping off Canada. If anything, Canada has always been ripping off itself because it does not get the most out of trade with the U.S., not because trade with the U.S. is bad. There's no such thing as bad trade. There is a bad economy. Canada has a bad economy. Every single province in Canada has higher income taxes than the highest taxed state in the U.S. In California and New York, although leaving out property taxes because that's extremely variable depending on where you live, California and New York, Massachusetts, states like that have lower income taxes than even provinces like Alberta when you combine provincial and federal taxes and you combine state and federal tax in the U.S. It's nuts. That's why Canada loses on trade with the United States. Yeah, there's some issues even though we have free trade, we still have some protectionism on certain products that we have. The US has some protectionism on products that they have. But at the end of the day, the main problem between the US and Canada in terms of trade, at least on the Canadian side of the border, is that our taxes are too high and our regulations are too high. If we deal with those two things, we would be absolutely fine. There's been a lot of people on what I'd call the paleo-con right, the paleo-conservative right, who have been arguing that John Turner is right about trade. It's been hurting Canada. We've been losing jobs to the U.S. Guys, if we had a wall with the U.S. and we didn't trade at all, that wouldn't create a bunch of prosperity in Canada. That would just mean a bunch of people would leap over the wall and go work in the U.S. If our regulations and economy suck, our tax system sucks, people will leave whether we trade with the U.S. or not. Trading is basically just not trading or protectionism is just a band-aid solution trying to pretend that we are not living in reality and that it doesn't matter if our economy sucks. We can keep all the manufacturers and producers here. If it's not profitable to be here, they will leave. Patriotism does not mean anything when you can't make a go of it. That's, I guess, my summation on that subject. But now our entire society is just getting worse because of just how much the left has screwed stuff up. So the Liberals have. So there's an occupation at Parliament right now of a bunch of pro-Palestine, basically useful idiots. I think it was a Jewish organization that was occupying Parliament for Palestine and then they're using the fact that they're Jewish to try and, like, I guess, justify all this. But yeah, we have idiots taking over our institutions, and have the Liberals cracked down on these people? Have the Liberals made sure to clear out these people who are trying to take over our parliament? No, no, they're allowed. They're allowed to. You're allowed to take over Canadian institutions if you're on the left, because because society has become so permissive of left-wing violence and intimidation under the Liberals because Trudeau agrees with them. This is why there are Black Bloc Antifa people burning things and breaking windows in Montreal while he's at the Taylor Swift concert. And if there's a single right-wing person who dares to protest or even cover a protest like Ezra Levant did in Toronto on the streets, they will be arrested. Trudeau has absolutely shredded our credibility around the world because of stuff like this, because he can't find reason to remove these people who are actually blocking staircases, but he runs over an elderly Indigenous woman with a horse for daring to protest lockdowns and the ArriveCan app in Ottawa in the 2022 Freedom Convoy. The country is run by Muppets. It's so bad. And who could guess why Justin Trudeau is doing so bad in the polls right now? So let's just do a polling update to close this video out. Hopefully this isn't running long for you, but I know some people like the long form content, and this is helping me get a rant out. Also, by the way, to sideswipe this issue, 51st state discourse is stupid. Canada should not become the 51st state of the US because we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. I agree. US policy right now is better than Canada's, but Canada's policy used to be better than the US at certain points, especially Canada when Barack Obama was president and Harper was the prime minister, was far better. We were far better managed. Yes, the US Constitution is stronger for individual rights than the Charter, but I'd like the Charter to get better, not have a Canada join the US and probably end up just watering down the US and making it easier for the Democrats to win elections down there. I am patriotic in the sense I want Canada to always be better. By the way, we were the country that technically helped end slavery around the world because we ended it first in the British Empire. We advocated against first, which caused the British Empire to get rid of it everywhere, which then caused the US to get rid of it eventually and many other jurisdictions. Canada has done a lot of great stuff over time, so let's not, surrender the country because Justin Trudeau sucks. Does he suck? Yes. But, let's hold our horses a little bit here in terms of being like, this place sucks, we should join the US. This is the current chart of polling right now in Canada. The Liberals have not clawed back any support. Think about how much the Liberals have done in terms of new programs, attacks on the Conservatives. Now they're going after crisis pregnancy centers because the Liberals cannot abide pro-life people doing anything good, literally helping pay for the newborn children of pregnant women instead of aborting them. That's bad, so they're going after those. But this is the trend. The Liberals haven't gotten any juice out of any of this stuff because people are tired of them. So if I'm to argue that the Liberals have at least done one good thing in Canada, they've made the best case possible for why we need conservatism again, why we need classical liberal conservatism that actually cares about small government and free markets and real social values and, not turning Canada into a post-national state, having immigration controls, all that stuff. This has been, if anything, the only silver lining of the Trudeau legacy. If anything, if Trudeau was only a one-term prime minister, maybe we'll still be dealing with woke politics in 30 years. Because Trudeau is so bad, I can see woke politics potentially ending in Canada in the next decade because of how hard it's failed. Young people are far more conservative than people actually in older age demographics because they've had to grow up with the woke teachers. They've had to deal with woke activists at their universities, silly woke friends who are absolutely delusional to the realities of life. And that is what's driving the rise in conservative polling numbers. Yes, Poilievre is a good leader. He's charismatic, has good policies overall, but it's also because of how awful the left has become. So I guess that's a great place to end it off here. I'm going to probably be back tomorrow to talk about that ridiculous CBC article that they put out, which is literally based off of the previous reporting of a Kalistani publication, trying to claim that Pierre Poilievre must have stolen the 2022 Conservative Party leadership election. He didn't. Patrick Brown's a loser. Patrick Brown is the king of ballot box stuffing, and he got kicked out of the Conservative leadership race because that guy's super sketchy, objectively sketchy. Not like somebody was like somebody that he'd be lying or something like that. That Patrick Brown must have been up to something, so they threw him out. Patrick Brown is always up to something. That's why he was tossed out. And no, it wasn't Indian government agents that did it. My goodness. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Notice how I'm also wearing a sweater. I somehow have gained the ability to wear sweaters now. I don't need to just wear jackets all the time. I can wear sweaters, but I still got to wear the button-up shirt at all times. But I'm evolving a little bit. If you guys want to support the show, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if you want to donate to the legal fund, that will be in the description of this video below, as well as pinned at the top of the comments. And if you want to sign up to my leadership and nomination recommendation list, you go to my website, also pinned to the comments, WyattClaypool.com. If you put your information in there, if there's an interesting nomination race going on in your area, and I have enough people in the area to reach out to, I can send you an email, recommend good candidates, or like rank a ballot theoretically for a leadership race or a nomination, so that I can kind of give you guys my perspective on very microscopic and small political battles that are going on around the country. I'll even be doing that in Calgary for the upcoming municipal election in 2025, and in other jurisdictions around Alberta where I have a decent amount of data and can actually make a difference. So anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Have a good one.